Good evening, boys and girls. It's Miss Gordon, and we're back. And believe it or not, we are at the end of our very first module in math. There are 6 modules throughout the course of the year, and this is our first one, and it's all about place value. So as you know, we've been doing a lot with place value decimals, understanding, comparing, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, doing some conversion, standard expanded form. So guess what? We're going to pause and review all of that over the next 2 nights. So with that being said, you do have a test coming up. So we want to make sure that you are prepared as best as you possibly can. So here is what I want you to do. As always, review homework is a little different. If you have not tried any of the problems on your flip video homework tonight on your own, I want you to pause the video here and try as many of them as you can. All right, I want you to do the whole sheet. There's only 5 problems, so do the whole sheet. With that being said, once you're done, I want you to come back, watch the video. So number 1, you get credit for that, for our homework, and also to see how you did with your questions. Tomorrow in class, we'll do a big review, and then you can figure out what you need to focus on, what I maybe can help you with to make sure that you are ready for our first very big test of the year. All right, so if you haven't already done that, make sure you try some of the problems on your own. If you get stuck, as always, you can watch the video so I can give you a little assistance, but I really want you to try these on your own. And then make sure you come back, check your work with me. All right, so pause the video here if you haven't done the questions, do them now and get ready to check your work with me. Here we go, boys and girls. Number 1 says, what is 26 and 891 thousandths rounded to the nearest tenth? So again, if you haven't tried this problem on your own, I want you to try and then come back and check your work with me in a couple of minutes after you finished it on your own. But if you have done it and you're here just to check your work, stay with me. So here we go, 26 and 891 thousandths. It says rounded to the nearest tenth. Well, we know after the decimal point, there's the tenths, whoops. After the decimal point, there's the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths, right? So they want the 10th place. So the 8 is in the 10th place. So I'm going to find the place, look next door. And I'm going to see what the next door neighbor tells us. If it's 5 or higher, we're going to round up. We're going to add 1 more to our 10th place. However, if it's 4 or less, we're just going to let that 10th place rest. With that being said, 9 is 5 or higher, so we're going to add 1 more. So 8 turns to 9. Everything behind that digit changes to 0. Everything before it stays the same. So make sure you have your decimal point and the 26 before it. So the correct answer for this one is 26 and 9/10, or you can write it as 26.900. Nicely done, boys and girls. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 says, Mrs. Smythe has to fill her pool with 7,571 and 824 thousandths liters of water. That's a lot of water. Round that number to the nearest whole liter. So we know that we're rounding again, and make sure if you haven't done this problem, make sure you pause the video here, try it on your own, and come back and check your work with me. But if you have done it and you're just looking to check, by all means, keep watching. So with that being said, it wants us to round to the nearest whole liter. Well, what does that mean? What does whole number mean? Whole liter mean? Well, I know 7,571 are whole numbers, right? So is that what they're talking about? Not decimals, right? We want to get rid of those decimals. So what is the first whole number in this number? If you said the ones place, you're right. So anytime you see the words, they want us to round to the nearest whole number, whole liter, whole meter, whole whatever, they're always talking about the ones place because that's our first whole number. So we're going to find the place, look next door, think 8, is it 5 or higher, 4 or less? 5 or higher. So we're going to add 1 more back onto that ones place. So 1 becomes now a 2. Everything behind it changes to zeros, which we're going to add our decimal point because now we're rid of those decimals, and everything before it stays the same. So we know about Mrs. Smythe fills her pool with 7,572 liters of water. And that's our answer. You can also write it just like I did down here, 7,572 and 000. Nicely done. Question number 3, it says, what's the value of the expression? And it gives us 91 and 58 times 10 to the second power. Ooh, it's been a while since we've seen those exponents, hasn't it? So think about what 10 to the power of 2 means. Ultimately, we know anytime we see an exponent, it means we're going to take the big number and multiply it by itself. How many times saying that little number? So the little number says we're going to take 10 and multiply it by itself 2 times. So what's 10 times 10, gang? It's 100. Nice. So we're going to take 91 and 58 and shift it 2 places bigger. So for me, I like using the place value chart. Oops. So you can draw yourself up one if you want. You certainly don't have to. So I'm going to have my 5, my 8, here's my decimal, my 9, my 1, and I'll give myself a couple more rooms since I'm going bigger. So I'm going to shift my number 2 places bigger. So here's once, twice, here's my 9. My 1 moves once, twice, here's 1. 5 is here, 8 is here, and my decimal point is behind it, so I know I have a whole number. So correct answer should be 9,158, and if you wanted behind it, you could also write it as a decimal. So 9,158.00. Awesome job. All right, boys and girls, we're going to do a little conversion. So 632 and 1/10 meter equals how many centimeters? So always, anytime you see conversions, anytime you see 2 different types of measurement, we always do the same thing. I always look to see which is bigger, meters or centimeters. Is a meter bigger than a centimeter, or is a centimeter bigger than a meter? If you said meter, you're absolutely correct. So we're going from big to small. So when we go from big to small, if you can remember my cheer, I start with my arms out wide, like a big unit of measure down to a small unit of measure. We cross our arms and we think about we are multiplying. Exactly. So I'm going to take 632 and 1/10, and I'm going to multiply it by how many centimeters in a meter. And some of you might not have your reference sheet at home, and that's okay. So I'll give you the reference for this. So 1 meter equals, oops, that wasn't very neat, was it? 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. So you are multiplying by 100. So if you need to, as always, you can make a place value chart. So I'm going to start with my number, 632 and 1/10, and I'm going to make my place value chart. And I'm going to shift that number 2 places bigger, right? So here's once, twice, here's my 6, my 3, my 2, my 1, and I got an empty place marker, so I'm going to add a 0. So correct answer should be 63,210. And if you want a decimal behind it, you could certainly write it. So 63,210. And if you want to add a decimal or any amount of zeros, that is fine. So the correct answer should also have a label too, because we're converted to centimeters. Nicely done. All right, boys and girls, the last problem that we have for this particular review is asking what is the product of 8 and 7/10 and 3? So the word product is underlined because they're telling you to do an operation. Think back when we started talking about operation words, thinking about what might mean adding, what might mean subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. Can you remember what the word product means? If you said multiplication or the answer to a multiplication problem, you're absolutely right. So we're going to take 8 and 7/10 and we're going to multiply it by 3, multiplying. So we're making 3 copies, 8 and 7/10 times 3. So let's do that. So I'm going to take 7 and multiply it by 3, and I get 21. So bring down my 1, carry my 2. And now next we're going to do 3 times 8. 3 times 8 equals 24. Plus, though, we have to add on 2 more. Plus 2 equals 26. Now, I always think about how many places after the decimal. I have 1 place, so this is a 10th. So I'm going to move it in so it represents a 10th. So 26 and 1/10 is my answer for this. The product of 8 and 7/10 times 3. Awesome. Now it says write your answer in expanded form. And again, this is something we haven't reviewed in a long time. So we're going to take each digit and we're going to multiply by how much it's worth, what place it's in. So the first digit I see in our answer is a 2. 2 is in the what's place. 2 is in the tens place, exactly. So I'm going to write 2 times 10 plus my next digit going over from biggest to smallest is a 6. So I take the 6 and then think, what place is the 6 in? It's in the ones place, exactly. So 6 times 1. Plus I got a decimal, so I know my last digit is a 1 in my number. So we went from the 2 to the 6 to the 1. And the 1 is in the tens place. And remember, you can write this 2 different ways, like a fraction or like a decimal. I'll write it underneath and just in case you want to write it as a decimal. Totally your choice. It's the same thing. And that's my answer in expanded form. So boys and girls, I hope you did a pretty good job with this review. It wasn't too bad, but we're definitely going to do some more review problems tomorrow. So if you have not tried these problems, I hope you did. I hope you followed along with me. Or if you struggled with a problem, just let me know, and I'm more than willing to work on it with you tomorrow. I'll see you then, boys and girls. Have a great night.